רגע, ינון, תמרכז אותי רגע. ינון, תמרכז אותי פה בערך.
If you were to walk through the streets of Jerusalem today, you'd notice the usual scenes, the stone walls, the markets overflowing with color, the mixture of prayers echoing through the air. But if you pause and look closer, you'll notice something new, something that feels almost out of place. Signs. Not signs for tourists, not signs for shops or hotels, but bold declarations pointing to the house of God. Why here? Why now in one of the most contested places on earth? For some, these signs are nothing but the work of fringe activists. But for others, they are prophetic signals, reminders that the long-spoken, long-awaited Third Temple is no longer just whispered about in religious circles. It has entered the visible streets of the city. And that raises a serious question. Are we living at the threshold of one of the most explosive fulfillments of biblical prophecy? Because history shows us this, whenever a temple has risen in Jerusalem, the world has shifted. Empires have fallen. Nations have realigned. Prophets have spoken. And the Bible insists that yet another temple is coming. To understand why this matters, we need to revisit the story of Jerusalem's past. The first temple, built by King Solomon around 3,000 years ago, was like nothing the world had ever seen. It was made with cedar, gold and stone, and it was said to hold the very presence of God himself. But in 586 BC, Babylonian armies stormed Jerusalem, burned the temple to the ground, and carried away its treasures. The Ark of the Covenant disappeared into history. Centuries later, a second temple was built. At first, it was a humble structure, but under Herod the Great, it became magnificent. This was the very temple where Jesus taught, healed, and overturned the tables of money changers. But in AD 70, Roman legions marched into Jerusalem and destroyed it stone by stone, just as Jesus had predicted. The story could have ended there. But prophecy did not stop with destruction. The prophet Daniel spoke of a future sanctuary. Paul, in 2 Thessalonians, warned of a lawless ruler who would set himself up in God's temple, and the book of Revelation described a temple yet to come. The pattern is undeniable. The Bible promises another temple, and every time a temple rises, the world changes, fast forward to today. Why are road signs suddenly pointing the way to the house of the Lord? Some dismiss them as the work of activists, but in Israel, symbols are never trivial. A small sign can spark global headlines. A prayer can ignite protests. A slogan can move a nation. These signs are not just graffiti, they are a declaration. They echo the words of Isaiah and Micah, who foresaw the nations streaming to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God in Jerusalem. They point to something bigger than politics. They point to prophecy. But the signs are only one piece of the puzzle. The Temple Mount itself has become the greatest sign of all. For decades, Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount was strictly forbidden. Any Jew who dared to pray, even silently moving their lips, risked arrest. The Mount was treated as off-limits. But that is changing. In recent years, Israeli officials themselves, not just religious activists, have prayed openly on the Mount. One shocking moment was when a member of the Israeli parliament, Itamar Ben-Gvir, prayed openly there with thousands of others. No police dragged him away. The prayer went forward. That moment marked a turning point. What was once considered untouchable is now contested ground. Each public prayer weakens the taboo, making Jewish worship there more normal, more possible. And all of this mirrors Zechariah's prophecy, Jerusalem becoming a heavy stone. For all nations, a city that causes the world to tremble. Every headline about the Temple Mount confirms it. Another piece of the puzzle is the return of the Jewish people to their land. The prophets foretold it, Ezekiel's vision of dry bones coming back to life, the scattered tribes being regathered. And today, it has happened before our very eyes. Jews from across the world, Russia, Ethiopia, Europe, America, have returned to Israel. Every wave of Aliyah makes the building of the temple more plausible, because the people who once only prayed for it from afar are now in the land, ready to act. Beneath Jerusalem, archaeologists continue to dig. They have uncovered stairways, ritual baths, and streets from the time of the Second Temple. Every discovery confirms what the Bible said all along: the temple was real, the worship was real, and history supports it. These stones cry out, not just about the past, but perhaps about the future. If the first and second temples stood here, why not the third? Perhaps the most startling truth is this: the preparations for the third temple are already finished. Since 1987, an organization called the Temple Institute has worked to recreate the sacred objects of the temple. Today, nearly every vessel described in the Torah has been rebuilt. The golden menorah gleams in Jerusalem, ready for use. The altar of incense, the silver trumpets, the table of showbread, all complete. Even the high priest's garments, woven in blue, purple, and scarlet, with the golden plate inscribed, "Holy to the Lord," are ready. Priests descended from the line of Aaron have been identified and trained. Ritual sacrifices have already been rehearsed. These are not symbolic acts, they are practical preparations. And then there is the red heifer. The Book of Numbers requires a flawless red heifer for purification before temple service can begin. For centuries, such an animal seemed impossible, but today, red heifers have been bred, some even brought from the United States to Israel. If one remains without blemish, the final requirement for temple worship will be met. The vessels are ready. The priests are ready. The red heifer is ready. The only thing missing is permission. So how could the temple actually be rebuilt? There are at least 3 possible scenarios. Israel could decide to build even against opposition. This would almost certainly spark massive conflict, as the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque are sacred to Muslims worldwide. War could erupt, but history shows that what once seemed impossible, like Israel's rebirth in 1948 or the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967, can happen against all odds. Another possibility is a political treaty. Daniel speaks of a covenant made with many for a set time. Perhaps international mediators will negotiate an arrangement where Muslims keep their shrines, but Jews are allowed to build nearby. To the world, it would look like peace and tolerance. But prophecy warns this peace would be temporary, a fragile calm before chaos. The most chilling scenario is that the temple is built but later becomes the seat of deception. Paul warns that the man of lawlessness will exalt himself in the temple, claiming to be God. Revelation echoes this with the vision of the beast demanding worship. In this case, the temple becomes not only a house of prayer, but also a stage for ultimate rebellion against God. Each scenario is different, but all converge on one outcome: the temple will rise again. What would the third temple mean spiritually? For Jews, it represents redemption, the return of God's dwelling place on earth. For Christians, the picture is more complex. The New Testament teaches that Jesus fulfilled the role of the temple, and believers themselves are called living temples of the Holy Spirit. Yet prophecy still points to a future temple, especially in the context of the end times. So, for Christians, a rebuilt temple is both a sign of God's sovereignty and a warning of coming tribulation. When we step back and see the whole picture, the signs on Jerusalem's streets, the prayers on the Temple Mount, the return of the Jewish people, the discoveries beneath the city, the Temple Institute's preparations, the red heifer waiting, together, they form a prophetic tapestry. The world may not yet see the walls rising, but the scaffolding of history is already in place. The temple is no longer just an idea. It is a near reality. And prophecy tells us its return will not be silent. It will stir nations. It will test faith. It will mark the unfolding of the final chapters of history. So what does this mean for us? It means we cannot treat prophecy as distant theory. We are living inside it. The signs are not random. They are converging. And if the temple rises soon, as prophecy insists it will confront every nation and every person with a choice. Will we turn to God in faith? Or will we be swept up in compromise, deception, and fear? The rise of the temple is not the end of the story. It is the stage for something greater, the return of the true King, the Messiah who will reign not just in stone buildings, but in every heart that belongs to Him. Wake up, be ready, the signs are speaking, and the one who is coming is near.